But we need to talk real quick about antinatalism. How it's eugenicist, and a lot of its thinkings are rooted in the Great Replacement theory and other white supremacy nonsense.
Antinatalist arguments have existed long before the Great Replacement theory. The philosophical tradition has consistently focused on suffering and ethics of creating new lives, not on preserving or replacing any particular race. Philosophers and religious traditions have questioned the morality of bringing new life into a world of suffering for thousands of years. In modern philosophy, author Schopenhauer in the 19th century and later Julio Cabrera, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, and also David Benatar developed arguments centered on suffering, harm, and consent, not race or demographic change. That doesn't mean no racist has ever held anti-natalist ideas, but historically, the philosophy itself did not originate from the Great Replacement theory or white supremacy.
Statistically, the folks who are reproducing, the populations that are growing, those are non-white populations. Anytime someone talks about population control, anytime someone advocates for us stopping reproduction as a species, it's a dog whistle to white supremacy, because the folks who are having kids are not white. But please be aware, if you're spouting antinatalist nonsense, that you are spouting eugenics and white supremacy. Have you heard the term? Do you understand how it's thinly cloaked eugenics and how it supports white supremacy?
So I think she's basically claiming that antinatalism is a fake philosophy created by racists or otherwise hijacked by racists to convince non-white people to not have kids. And we all have been duped by this. If you're not going to have a kid because you don't want it to suffer or cause suffering, or maybe because you can't get its consent, you're supporting racism. And also, antinatalism isn't about population control. That would be more like what antinatalists call conditional natalism.
An antinatalist believes that we have a moral obligation as a species to stop having children. So I'm going to disagree and agree at the same time with part of this definition. Antinatalists do believe that it is immoral to have children if you are poor and if the children are brought into a world where there might be things like hunger, climate change, strife, conflict. They believe that kids did not consent to being created, so it's immoral to create children against their will and bring them into a world where there are hardships. It absolutely reinforces the white supremacist belief of the Great Replacement theory, and I'll tell you why real quick. The majority of people on Earth and in America who are procreating are non-white people. The majority of people on Earth who are born into circumstances where they have more poverty, a lower standard of living, and are likely to struggle more are non-white people. It's a very privileged, white, comfortable view to say that the only people who should be reproducing are those that can guarantee safety, security, and comfort for their children. It's absolutely a eugenicist belief to see the problem of poverty in this world, and instead of working to dismantle the systems.
This isn't an accurate view of antinatalism. Again, this is conditional natalism. The reasons that people are antinatalists still apply if a kid is born into a wealthy family in the US. First, any number of things could happen to that kid, and they could also cause suffering to others. And second, they will most likely go on to have children themselves, and their kids will have kids, and so on, creating a possibly very long line of descendants and many people who are going to suffer and cause suffering. Even if someone thought being a white rich family is utopia, like Parkrose does, that wouldn't last forever. Things are always changing. So even if all these descendants were perfect, had nothing wrong with them, nothing bad ever happened to them, and they cause little to no suffering to others, how long is their position in society like that going to last? And how long is the country going to last? How long will the world last as it is? Something is eventually going to happen that will cause this extremely lucky family to lose their luck. And then also, antinatalists are not trying to encourage reproduction based on the chance that all of someone's descendants are going to be lucky and harmless. Not only are those very low odds, but even if not, if the odds were flipped, most think that any chance at harm is not worth risking. Suppose, for the sake of argument, that a white supremacist started calling themselves antinatalists because they wanted non-white people to disappear. If they actually believed antinatalism, then they would also conclude that white people should stop reproducing. White people can suffer. White children could also be created without consent. The philosophy doesn't stop applying just because someone has pale skin. So why would the supposed white racist eugenics antinatalists want only white people to suffer if they're racist? Antinatalism doesn't claim that whites should procreate and non-whites shouldn't. But if they were racist, like you claim, then the philosophy that antinatalism stems from would lead them to say that white people should go extinct and therefore not suffer, and non-whites should continue to breed and continue to suffer. But again, antinatalism doesn't make exceptions on race, on who should suffer and who shouldn't, at least when it comes to humans for many of them. So to call them racist would be inaccurate. Racism is one of the many problems that antinatalists find to be a non-solvable issue in the world and is one of the reasons why they are antinatalist.
That put people in poverty in the first place. We say, oh yeah, y'all in poverty, especially brown and black people, you can't reproduce. This actually reminds me a lot of the video I did a while back on vegan activism and how it is rooted in white supremacy and it supports cultural genocide.
So what the heck, caring about farm animals is racist too.
How about you work to dismantle the power structures that have put those folks in poverty, that have colonized and exploited those folks in the first place? How about you work to dismantle white supremacy instead of touting a eugenicist belief and thinking that it is progressive?
So she's talking about poverty like it's the only thing that causes suffering. And if only we have the right policies, then nobody would suffer. A lot of people actually do this when it comes to extinction, too. There's so many things that cause suffering besides poverty. Human nature causes suffering in so many different ways. So does the nature of every animal. But to erase suffering from humans, you'd have to undo evolution and completely change what humans are. Now, that would be eugenics. And this is more conditional natalism, too, which means they're not having children, or perhaps they believe others shouldn't have children over things that can change in society instead of over things that are inherent to life. If only the government would put more money towards growing trees or taxing the rich more, then they would believe in having children again. Or maybe they would want to hold out for if they ever live in a communist society or whatever their fantasy system is, then they would have kids. But antinatalists realize that the problem is deeper than that. Trees and money is a temporary and minor solution for a minuscule problem that's actually just a symptom of a bigger and never ending problem within human nature. Policy doesn't change the fact that there would still be medical conditions, accidents, mental health issues, cruelty that shows up in so many different ways, and many more things that people didn't sign up for. No type of economic system or social organization that people are imagining that will bring forth a human utopia would work unless we practice eugenics. And even then, I think that's very unlikely to work. So she doesn't engage with the actual philosophical arguments for antinatalism. Instead, most of the video argues that certain political consequences would follow if people accepted antinatalism, or rather the antinatalism that she has inside her head. She also goes on in her video about how she has no problem with child-free and mentions lifestyle and responsibilities. She thinks if you don't have kids for these reasons, then that's fine. But if you don't want kids for moral reasons, like not wanting to cause someone suffering, then that's racist. The real philosophies and reasons behind antinatalism are more like philosophical pessimism, the issue of consent, suffering being inherent in life, facts of nature, misanthropy, and negative utilitarianism. But let's say that what if the unlikely scenario were to happen where more people accept antinatalism and people all over the world were to have less kids? Why would that be a bad thing, according to her? And why does race in her country matter? Why does she care if someone from India decides, you know what, I don't want to create a person because they might suffer? Apparently, she thinks it's bad for white people in the West to think this way. So basically, it's bad for anyone to not have kids for moral reasons instead of more like selfish reasons, like lifestyle choice. I'm putting that in quotes because I don't believe it's actually selfish because there's nobody to be selfish towards. But I hope you get my point. Anyways, any reason someone doesn't want to have kids is a valid reason.
When you are advocating for a policy that says that nobody should be having babies, in a world where white people are having babies below replacement, you are inherently saying people of color should not be reproducing.